The latest developments surrounding Australian airline Qantas are, as always, incredibly important. Qantas was an airline, and rather a group, that were hit incredibly hard during the global pandemic. This was thanks to Australia's tightly closed borders, the reopening that heavily favoured the Australian carrier, and has allowed it to welcome more customers than probably initially expected a year ago. Because of that, there have also been new routes launched, aircraft returning, and much more. It's now time, however, to take a look at some of the latest developments involving the Australian airline. So, beginning right off the bat with none other than the international sector of the group's operations, following their update coming at the end of the previous week. Qantas themselves is continuing to see robust demand on their international routes, and this can be especially noted for services through to the likes of North America as the northern summer peak of travel begins to arrive. In addition to that, there is also a very continued easing of restrictions in a handful of countries around the world, which means, as Qantas, they are able to explore the possibility of launching new services, or in addition, reinstating existing ones that had gone missing during the pandemic. Notably, on the 23rd of May, and what did receive quite the fanfare, their Perth to London service finally returned, having previously been rerouted since the beginning of the pandemic. With an addition, QF1, the flagship route, will eventually be switching back to the Airbus A380 in the future, and of course, will go back through its routine stopover of Singapore instead of up north in Australia of Darwin. Meanwhile, as these Airbus A380s continue to be reinstated onto routes, a third A380 will be returning from storage to operate very shortly on the 6th of June once again. This specific A380 will be flying on the Melbourne to Los Angeles routing, and of course will be available on other routes in addition, as we see the switching of aircraft. The airline has reported seeing just under 50% of pre-pandemic demand levels for international capacity, but they do expect at the end of the first quarter of the fiscal year 2023, this should be at around 70%. As for what the future holds regarding their international services, well, we do know that from the 22nd of June, a seasonal Perth to Rome service will begin. Meanwhile, Sydney to Bangalore from the 14th of September. Finally, much later in the year, Melbourne to Dallas Fort Worth from the 2nd of December will begin as they continue to strengthen and also re-strengthen their global operations with the emergence of new routes and, of course, the addition of existing ones returning to the global network. In saying this, despite the airline reporting substantial domestic travel and demand that is also adequate across all sectors due to fuel prices which are continuing to rise, they have announced that they'll be cutting some of their capacity services for July and August. Still though, specific routes haven't been announced to my knowledge. It'll likely simply be a scaling back of daily operations into key destinations as they look to put safety measures to help cope with the ever-changing market condition. This is something I've covered pretty extensively over recent years, and I'd argue even more so with the emergence of the pandemic, as we look at how airlines and businesses at the end of the day, as that is what they are, continue to try and stay profitable, or at the very least, navigate challenges to remain in a better position moving forward. What are your thoughts on the latest at the airline? Of course, coverage today centered around the international sector and the domestic sector, with I'd argue probably the international frame being a lot more positive than the changes being made to the domestic area. In saying all this though, it's not just all negatives around the domestic sector. Qantas can definitely be proud thanks to the resurgence of domestic travel, with of course this hitting pre-pandemic numbers and a lot more people flying within the country as all states' borders have indeed opened up now. If you have any thoughts, you can let me know down below in the comments. Until the next video, do take care, and I will indeed see you next time.